안녕하세요, 여러분. Hello, everyone. In this video, we're gonna talk about two number systems in Korean language. Yes, there are two number systems. One based on Chinese characters called Sino numbers, the other one based on pure native Korean numbers. Let's start with Chinese Sino numbers. Number one, 일. Number two, 이. Number three, 삼. Number four, 사. Number five, 오. Number six, 육. Number seven, 칠. Number eight, 팔. Number nine, 구. Number 10, 십. 100, 백. Even though you hear a little bit of p sound, do not make p sound on your own. It's more like b sound uh, near uh, your airway, but a little bit air goes out. So it sounds like p with air coming out, but do not make p sound on your own. It's more like b sound. 백, 1,000, 천, 10,000, 만. Let's compare American numbers and Korean numbers. American numbers are grouped uh, each three zeros. So each 1,000 um is divided with comma. So 1, 10, 100, 1,000. As there are three zeros right here, 10,000, 100,000, and another three zeros here grouped, making 1,000,000. Let's look at Korean numbers. Even though they adopted American comma system, three zeros, indeed, um, they group four zeros. Let's look at that. 1, 10, 100, 천, 만. 만 is grouped with four zeros, and then on top of it, 10만, 100만, 천만, making 1억, because here's another four zeros. That's the fundamental difference. So this will help you how to remember the numbers. So Sino numbers are used to, how do I say, more in written form. On the envelope, the address; on the application, the numbers; on the apartment building, the numbers. If it's written, uh, the rule of thumb, think it as Chinese numbers. Look at these apartment buildings. Building number 104, we call it 백사동, which is Sino numbers. And then look at the orange arrow. To indicate each apartment number, we use Sino number 203호. That's how we say. This is a calendar. Numbers are written on the paper. So you use Sino numbers to read these dates. However, to indicate duration of how many days, both Sino numbers or native Korean numbers are used. Let's read only number parts. 5톤, 100% or 100%, 50톤. This is a written communication, and we just used Sino numbers. I want to point out one thing before we move. This 오톤 can be said as 다섯 톤 if you are verbally communicating with someone to refer that amount. So especially before number 10, if you're verbally communicating, oftentimes native Korean counting number systems are used. So numbers written on bingo card, Sino numbers. This is an example test question. Um, Question number one, 1번 문제. And if you look at the lower part of this question, there's example answers, right? Answer number one, number two, number three, number four. You are supposed to pick the right answer. Uh, Answer is 답. 답 1번, 2번, 3번, 4번. All these numbers are written on a paper, so Sino numbers are used. Now let's look at this. This is some sort of advertisement or a promotion. Let's look at one by one. This date, we learned Sino numbers. Now, 하루 means a day. 하루에 한 번 means once a day. 한 번 is counting. 하루에 한 번 means once a day. Now, these are not Sino numbers. It's because this expression is very colloquial. We say this expression a lot. It's like verbal, colloquial expression. So we use native Korean expression 하루에 한 번, once a day. We say it all the time. And look at this. Uh, Stamp. Number one is hidden behind the stamp, right? If you go there one time, you get one stamp. If you go there two times, you get two stamps. If you are about to counting how many stamps by one stamp or two stamps, just like that, then you will most likely use Korean native number systems. So when you're talking, when you're counting, especially under number 10, use native Korean numbers. This looks like 3곳, right? 1, 2, 3. However, it's not. It's 세 곳 or 세 군데. 곳 and 군데 are colloquial counting nouns for little area, places. So how do we distinguish why they are written but not using Sino numbers? It's because this is for advertisement, and those advertisers sometimes want their copyright sound as if they are talking to you, verbally talking to you. Friendly expressions. So 세 곳 is colloquial expressions. That's why. Let's look at native Korean number systems. 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷, 다섯, 여섯, 일곱, 여덟, 아홉, 열. Especially from 1 to 4, they change their form right before the counting noun. 한두, 세, 네. 한두, 세, 네. This is time. Hour, number 1. Minute, number 10. Just like in English, even though hour is number 1, when we read the time, we say 1 o'clock instead of 1 hour, right? So just like that, um, even though it's written, we feel like we should use Sino numbers, but only the hour part is read with native Korean numbers. Just like 1 hour, our number 1 is read 1 o'clock. 한시, not 일시. 한시, this is native Korean number. 10분, that's Sino numbers. So 시, the hour, is different. Okay, if the teacher calls number one uh, two times, when the teacher is checking the attendance with each student's number, number one, I'm gonna call one more time, number one, just like that. When the teacher called it twice, then in Korean, 1번 하고 2번 불렀어요. 1번 is the number, the assigned administrative number, right? For each student, 1번. 2번 불렀어요 is colloquial, like, counting, like verbally called out, right? So it's native Korean numbers. Before I end this video, just a little short story. Long time ago, Chinese characters are used and studied by upper class people. Those people who work in government, who studied, they use the Chinese characters on the paper, government official document. But but for Korean people who just regular people, uh, they used native Korean number systems to count things, merchants, to count to their animals in the market, to buy and to sell, especially under number 10, uh, when they counting, when they talk, uh, when they have to say the numbers out loud, they tend to use native Korean numbers. So think it that way. I hope this video will help some of you. Happy learning.